and welcome to Words of Wisdom. My name is Yvonne, and I am the current president of Wisdom Chapter number 25. Tonight we're going to be talking about women in history, because March is Women History Month. And to give a little bit of feedback, National Women History Month actually can be traced back to March 8th of 1857. This was when women from New York factories actually staged a protest over working conditions that they were involved in at the time. The International Women's Day was first observed in 1909, but it was not until 1981 that a Congress established National Women's Day History Week to be commemorated the second week of March. In 1987, Congress also expanded the week to a month. Some of the things that I'm going to be talking about tonight are some of the pioneer women that have trailblazed and made things possible for women like myself and others to succeed in not only the workforce but in society as a whole. I'm going to have a few trivia questions and unknown facts that I'm going to disclose as well and make it sort of an interesting evening. The organization that I'm with is Wisdom Chapter number 25. We're located at 8220 Southwestern. And our website is wisdomchapter25.org, where you can go and find links to helpful information, resources throughout the community of Chicago and surrounding areas in which we served. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the timeline that women have as far as things that we have accomplished. The timeline that I'm going to talk about tonight starts back all the way to 1789. And in 1789, the U.S. Constitution was ratified, and the term persons, people, and electors allow for interpretation of those beings to include men and women. So before then, we did not have an official title to be reckoned with. Some of the other things that we can learn from this timeline is that in 1837, Oberlin College in Ohio became the first co-educational college in the U.S. So women were segregated from their men counterparts all the way until 1837 when Oberlin College in Ohio decided to allow both men and women to coexist. Some of the most notable things that happened starts, as we see by the picture, in 1843. A woman by the name of Isabella Bumfree takes the name of Sojourner Truth and goes on to become a famed abolitionist and women's rights activist. These things are very, very important because people like Sojourner Truth and Rosa Parks and Amelia Earhart and other women, they stepped outside of the box and allowed women to think freely and excel in things such as math and science, aeronautics, medicine, and things of those natures. To look at the legal side of some of the women history, there was a case named Muller v. Oregon that goes back to 1908. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court upheld an Oregon state law limiting women to working no more than 10 hours a day. Why was this important? Because women had no time constraint on the hours that they were forced or mandated to work. This took away from their roles as mothers, wives, home care providers, and things of that sort. And so our children were being left motherless by a society that forced women to work extensive hours. Thankfully today, those things are not in place, and that is in part by Muller v. Oregon of 1908. Another nice case to look back to show the growth that we have obtained is going to be Reed versus Reed of 1971. In a 7-0 decision, the court struck down an Illinois law giving preference to a male seeking to administrate an estate over an equally entitled woman. This case concerned a set of separate parents whose adopted son had died without a will. In that case, the father sought for complete control over the son's assets. And because of the times, women found themselves in a situation where it was hard for them to legally battle ex-husbands or other men in the court system. But this Supreme Court ruled that men and women could be treated differently only when there was some reasonable and relevant cause for doing so. And therefore it made the mother in this case equally eligible to fight for her son's assets. And I think that's a great point that we have tonight, today, equal rights in cases such as divorce and things like that. Some of the other people I want to talk about on our time, like tonight, are going to be people such as Susan B. Anthony. It's a little known fact that in 1872, Susan B. Anthony, who actually is now branded on her own dollar, was arrested because she attempted to vote. That is monumental, and a lot of people are not aware that, there were other people who were not of color, who were women, that were arrested simply for trying to exercise a right that they felt we were entitled to. In 1849, a woman by the name of Elizabeth Blackwell becomes the first woman to receive a medical degree from Geneva Medical College. Women are trailblazing the way in not only the medical field, but as well as, again, sports, science, math, and a whole bunch of other things that is very interesting to know. So we're going to start our Women in History Month trivia. Just a little fun stuff that I put together that I thought would be interesting for people to know. Because if I had not researched it, I wouldn't have known these facts myself. So, how well do you know the history of women? The right to vote. In what year did American women win the right to vote? Since I don't have any callers, I'll answer these myself. And please feel free to give us a call if you have an answer to any of these or any input that you would like to give us. But the correct answer is 1920. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. That is what the 19th Amendment read at that point. So, had Miss Susan B. Anthony waited just a little while longer, she may have avoided that arrest that she got because she wanted to exercise her right to vote. Women in power. Who was the first woman who actually ran for president of the United States? That woman would be Victoria Woodhull. Victoria Caitlin Woodhull was an American suffragist who was described in Gilded Age newspaper as a leader of the American women's suffrage movement in the 19th century. Woodhull was nominated for president of the United States by a newly formed Equal Rights Party on May 10th, 1872. So I think Hillary Clinton and any other women who choose to run for president can thank Miss Victoria for having the courage to stand up in a time where we don't actively accept or cannot accept a woman president in some of our minds. And back then it was just strictly not a foreseeable notion for that to even become fruition. But she did so. She ran. We have our elected first next. Jeanette Rankin was the first woman elected to what? She was actually elected to the U.S. Congress. In 1916, Jeanette Rankin was the first woman to be elected to the United States House of Representatives and the first female member of Congress, sometimes referred to as the Lady of the House. Way to go, Miss Jeanette. How well do you know your women in history? In 1849, Elizabeth Blackwell became the first woman to do what? Call her Dr. Blackwell. Elizabeth Blackwell was the first woman to graduate from medical school and a pioneer in educating women in medicine. So yes, that's our first woman doctor in the United States. So name that woman is next. Who am I? One of these questions I actually gave you the answer to earlier, but for history's sake, it's always good to repeat sometimes. And that was, what woman was born Isabella Bonfrey? Again, that would be Miss Sojourner Truth. Born Isabella Bonfrey in 1797 in Squatkill, New York. Her notable accomplishments were that she escaped slavery in 1826 and was the first woman to take a white man to court to recover her child. She became a vocal supporter of women's rights and often spoke passionately about women's rights, abolition, prison reform, and capital punishment, which she was against. Ms. Truth also helped recruit black men for the Union Army during the Civil War. Her most memorable quote was, "You may hiss as much as you please, but women will get their rights anyway." I think that is a very powerful quote from Ms. Sojourner Truth. This young lady was born Sarah Breedlove. Who am I? Sarah Breedlove was actually Madam C.J. Walker. Many of you know that Madam C.J. Walker was the first self-made African-American woman millionaire by selling her own hair care line. I was the co-founder of the women's temperance movement. Who am I? Our answer today is Susan B. Anthony. So not only was Miss Anthony arrested for attempting to vote when voting was not allowed for women, but she was also a pioneer as well. Sorry about that. I was the youngest American astronaut to enter space. Who am I? Miss Sally Ride was the first American woman to enter low orbit, and she was the only person to serve on the investigative panels for both the Challenger and Columbia shuttle disasters. She was a great, as a kid myself, I used to watch, I thought that NASA and their flights were fascinating. So to see a woman go into space, that was like, yeah, I can do anything. So hats off to Miss Sally Ride. I am noted as the founder of the Red Cross. Who am I? That would be Miss Clara Barton. Miss Clara Barton was not only a teacher, she was a patent clerk. And she was also, most notably, a nurse. And it was her efforts put together with some of her colleagues that created what we now recognize as the American Red Cross. So that was a great organization that she was the co-founder of. Sorry, everyone. And this one should be pretty easy. I ran like lightning, and in the 1988 U.S. Olympic trials, I set a new world record in a 100 meter. Who am I? That young lady would be Flojo, better known as Florence Joyner. That year, she did not actually compete because the boycotts for the Olympics, but in 1988 she won 3 gold medals. Unfortunately, not too long after that, Flojo had an issue with epilepsy and passed away. But she was a great American athlete, and between her and her sister-in-law, they were some of the fastest running women known, and an inspiration to a lot of young athletic women who now compete as well. And that's going to be the end of our trivia part. So again, you're watching Words of Wisdom, Wisdom chapter number 25. You can find us at wisdomchapter25.org, where there are helpful links to resources. We help with anything that we feel our community is in need of. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave comments on our website. If you have any comments or questions concerning this show, please give us a call at 312-738-1060. So tonight we talked about some very interesting women and their accomplishments for Women History Month. A couple of more cases that I wanted to speak out about. But before I do that, I wanted to give a few more things of our Women's History Month timeline. Were you aware that Muriel Siebert became the first woman to own a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and that was in 1967? When I think of the stock exchange, I think of men in stuffy suits, pretty much gambling on what will and what will not sell. To think of a woman in that hustle and bustle, I don't think that I would be equipped for it, and I take my hat off to her. Some other things that were very, very monumental to women in history is that Miss Shirley Chisholm became the first majority party woman and presidential candidate in 1972, an African American female, and she made strides with the things that she believed in and stood for. Coming closer to the present, not to diminish the importance of our history, in 2001, Secretary of Labor Elaine Chao becomes first Asian woman cabinet member. So we've gone from a men-dominated Congress, House, to we've allowed women of color, and now we're allowing women of other nationalities. So change is imminent. It may be slow coming, but it is imminent. And these women are still paving the way for our daughters and granddaughters to dream beyond today and tomorrow and well into the future of what they can become if they set their minds to it. Another small fact from my research is that in 2014, General Motors became the largest company, and at the time that they became the largest motor company, they had a woman as their CEO named Ms. Mary Barra. I'm going to talk about a couple more historical cases that can be found in our law books. One is going to be Doe versus Bolton of 1973. In that case, a 7-2 majority decision of Roe versus Wade overturned Georgia's abortion law on the same day. Among the law restrictions were the requirements that the abortion take place in an accredited hospital, that patients obtain the approval of 3 physicians and a hospital committee, and that the patients be a resident of Georgia. These restrictions were found to infringe upon the rights of the patient and those of her primary physician. These rulings, Roe versus Wade and Doe v. Bolton, brought about another case, well, several more cases actually, one being Webster versus the Reproductive Health Services and Planned Parenthood versus Casey of 1992. In Planned Parenthood versus Casey, a 5-4 decision, the court upheld several Pennsylvania restrictions while striking down the requirement of notifying a husband. So this actually gave women more rights over their own for parenting or reproduction. So today was a quick show of history of some women who did great accomplishments in our society. And we want to thank those women, both still here and gone, for being brave enough to step outside of the box and make things possible for women like myself and my daughters and granddaughters. This has been Words of Wisdom with Wisdom Chapter number 25. Again, our website is wisdomchapter25.org. There's a lot of information there on resources to support many of our community needs. Our phone number is also listed there, as well as our address, so feel free to reach out to us. You can also leave us a message in our message boards. And I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight. Have a wonderful evening.